There's no question we're living through one of the biggest technological shifts in human history. It feels like the very fabric of our lives, our work, our whole economy is getting rewired in real time by artificial intelligence. So let's dive right in.
And the scale of this change, honestly, it's hard to even wrap your head around it. Just look at this. Between 2020 and 2025, that's just 5 years, the amount of data we're all creating is set to multiply by 10,000. That's not a gentle curve. That's a rocket launch. We're building an entirely new reality around ourselves at an absolutely incredible speed. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it brings us to the core of what we're talking about today. One whole generation, Gen Z, was born right into this digital storm. They've never known anything different. So the big questions are, how is this world shaping them? And maybe even more importantly, what can their experience teach the rest of us about how to survive and thrive in it? Okay, so first things first, we've got to understand the engine that's driving all this, the AI-powered digital economy. And look, this is so much bigger than just social media or Amazon. We're talking about a fundamental restructuring of how our world creates value.
The G20 defines it as an economy where digitized information and knowledge become the key factors of production. Now let that sink in. For pretty much all of human history, the big three were land, labor, and capital. Now the real currency is data and the intelligence we can pull from it. And if you need proof of just how sudden this all was, this timeline says it all. It shows when countries started rolling out national AI strategies. Before 2010, it's pretty much crickets, a slow drip. After 2010, boom, it's a global explosion. Dozens of countries suddenly scrambling, all realizing that AI isn't just another piece of tech, it's the strategic high ground for the 21st century.
So, what happens to the people who grew up right in the middle of that explosion? Well, let's turn to Gen Z. They didn't have to learn to adapt to the digital world. For them, it's the only world they've ever known. And this is where you start to see some really fascinating contradictions. This generation is deeply anxious about climate change, yet they're also the driving force behind the hyper-consumerist world of fast fashion. They are the definition of digital natives, but they're also super nostalgic for the 80s and Y2K, eras they were barely even alive for. These aren't just funny little quirks, they're huge clues about what it's like to live in such an overwhelming world. And this isn't just a feeling, you can see the gap in the data. They say that making a positive impact on the world is a huge value for them. But when you ask what drives their career choices, that ideal kind of takes a back seat. The top answers? Developing skills and earning a good income. And look, it's easy to call that hypocrisy, but it's not. It's the messy reality of trying to build a life today, where the immediate need to survive can sometimes outweigh those bigger long-term values. And this constant juggling act, this gap between what you believe and what you have to do, well, it seems to be taking a massive psychological toll. The nonstop connectivity, the information overload, the constant pressure, it's a perfect recipe for anxiety. And the numbers here are frankly alarming. A 2024 study found that a staggering 42% of Gen Z experienced depression. 42%. This is way beyond teenage angst. We're talking about a documented mental health challenge on a massive scale, and its rise coincides almost perfectly with the rise of the hyper-connected world we just talked about. So to help us understand this, let's borrow a really useful idea from neuropsychology called defensive distance. Basically, it's your brain's internal alarm system for threats. The bigger or closer a threat seems, the more your brain tells you that you need to create distance, either physical or mental distance, to feel safe. So here's a thought. What if this widespread anxiety we're seeing is actually a form of defensive distance? Our minds, just completely overwhelmed by the scale and speed of the digital world, are trying to create some psychological breathing room. This could even explain those paradoxes we saw, right? Retreating into nostalgia for a simpler analog time. It's not a flaw. It's a natural, protective response to a totally unnatural environment. Now, this pressure doesn't just mess with our personal lives, it has totally changed our relationship with work. The digital economy runs on one simple, relentless rule: adapt, or you will become obsolete. And on the corporate side of things, the pressure is huge. But as David Rogers from Columbia points out, most companies are getting it completely wrong. A staggering 70% of their digital transformation projects just fail. Why? Because they treat it like a technology problem. They buy the shiny new software, but they totally ignore the human, organizational side of things.
Now compare that corporate speak with this brutally honest comment from a developer on Reddit. Their motivation for constantly learning new skills, for staying on that treadmill, isn't some high-minded goal of transformation, it's money. It's the raw, practical need to stay relevant so you can stay employed. So you're left with this massive disconnect. You've got companies talking about vision and transformation, while individual employees are just trying to keep their heads above water, driven by the very real need to make a living. And this gap? It explains so much of the stress and the burnout we see everywhere in the modern workplace. So, in a world with overwhelming technology, constant change, and intense pressure, it's pretty clear that our old ways of coping just aren't cutting it anymore. So, where do we look for answers? Well, maybe the solution isn't in the next new technology, but in a very, very old way of thinking. Let's ask a really fundamental question. With all of this external chaos, the AI, the economy, the social pressures, what is truly within our power? What can we actually control? This, right here, is the central question of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics talked about these 4 passions, but they didn't see them as just feelings we can't control. They saw them as irrational judgments, basically errors in our own thinking. So for them, distress isn't just sadness, it's the opinion that something bad is present. Fear isn't just being scared, it's the irrational choice to avoid an expected danger. They argued that these emotions are the result of our own faulty reasoning. And this is the core lesson. This is the whole thing. We can't control the pace of AI or what our company decides to do next week, but we can 100% control our response to those things. We can control the judgments we make about them. That is where our power truly lies. So that feeling of digital anxiety, it's not caused by the technology itself, but by our judgment about the technology. So as we wrap up, we're left with this final, powerful question. We know for a fact that AI is fundamentally reshaping our external world. That's happening whether we like it or not. The real challenge and the real opportunity for all of us is how we choose to reshape our internal world in response.